Hello, everyone. My name's Anita Thompson of Art Venture Workshops, and we will be recording tonight. We record well, actually all of the adult programming for these art programs. And then that way you can go back and if you want to redo it or you want to share it, you can do that. So after we record, I send it out to Chrissy probably later tonight, and she'll send it to you when she's able to. I'm assuming like the next few days. So just to quickly go over the supplies one more time, we are using acrylic paints tonight. You do need a pencil with an eraser so that we can make our silhouette and our moon, but most everything else is paint. You need a canvas or canvas board. I have 8 by 10. You can use 11 by 14. You can use 9 by 12. So you can go a little bigger if you want. And then we have 7 acrylic paint colors. We have red, orange, yellow, purple, blue, black, and white. Those are in the chat. I'm just going to recopy those one more time for those that joined recently. So I'm going to paste that. So you'll see that showing up in the chat. You're also going to need paper towels and a small cup of water in order to rinse your brushes. And we're going to get started. Let me just double check, make sure nobody else is coming in, and we are good. Okay. Yeah, apparently. So Chrissy told me we had I think she said 50 people that signed up for this, but I guess they're waiting for the recording. So that's good. It's summer. We got things to do. So, okay. So I'm going to move the painting over and have my blank canvas here and just rotate my camera just a little bit so we can get started. And so this is a very simple, I think it's a simple painting in the sense of, it's a simple drawing, and we do mostly everything with our paints where we'll be blending all of our colors. And then I realized what didn't really show up in the picture is, we're going to do some highlighting of our cactuses and our landscape. So I think it's a fun painting and rather easy compared to some of the other ones we've done, but challenging enough as far as the blending. Blending is not the easiest thing to do, but just do your best. All right, so getting started here. We're going to start off at the bottom of our canvas, and we're going to lay out our landscape. So basically, we're going to start at the bottom left corner here. And basically, what I like to do is sort of go upward first with the landscape, with the, the elevated portion of it, and then go back and draw in I almost said the canvases, the cacti. So let's start with that. So we're going to start off with our landscape area. I'm just going to double check. I thought I saw somebody coming in. Nope. Okay. Thought I saw somebody in the waiting room. All right. So starting again at the bottom left corner of your canvas, we're going to start maybe about 3 inches up from the bottom. Maybe a little less, actually. Maybe 2 inches, probably more like 2 inches. And so we're going to start and we're going to create sort of hilly areas. And then we'll fix those when we start to put in our cactus or a cacti. And you're going to go upward. So it's going to sort of climb up And I think I went a little too high because I still want to make sure that my cactus is able to fit on the canvas and not be all the way up to the sky. Excuse me. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the air quality today is very poor. Okay, so let me just take a look here. I still want to go a little bit lower. So I'm actually going to drop this one down just a little bit and go up that way. All right, I think we're good. And now, so we're going to start with our silhouettes to our cacti. So we're going to come back down to the left bottom corner here. And we're going to start with sort of a smaller cacti that's a little lumpy on the left side. Like so. And then we've got a lump, a little bit more of a lump right next to it. And then we go into our next cactus. So our next cactus, I like to make the longest part first and then draw on the arms. I call them arms. So this cactus is a little bit thinner, but there's also a little bit of a silhouette of another part of the canvas, right? Or the cactus right here. I'm going to keep calling it canvas. Ah. And then making it straight down right here. I'm going to go a little closer. I realize I'm sort of backed up a bit. There we go. I'm going to make this a little darker too, so you can all see it on Zoom. So we still have to finish up this side here, so it kind of curves out. And then goes back. And then we have on the other side, we have what looks like it's sort of a double, but really it's a silhouette of two of the sort of appendages. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it appendages for the cactus. All right, so we're going to continue onward here, and we have our landscape going down just a little bit and going a little bit straight as it goes back into the next area where we have a bit of a bump. And we have our next cactus, and this cactus is leaning a little bit this way. So again, I'm going to draw the inner portion, the straight part of it. It's also a little thicker at the bottom. And then we're going to attach on the left side here just one appendage, and it's rather close to the taller part. And it comes down, kind of hooks around there like so. And we've got one right next to it too. We have a little bit of space in between, but we have another one that's a little bit in the distance. So it's smaller. And that one's curving a little bit too. So we're working our way up, and we need to get a little flatter right here on the bottom. So this goes a little bit flatter. and then goes up a little more. So I still have to sort of erase my original here of the landscape. Now this one is going to bend again, starting at the bottom. So again, I'm taking the top part, bending it, and then it kind of rolls back around at the top, sort of leaning like this. And we've got a bump right here. Oops, I just realized I skipped over a cactus. Let me think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, I'm sorry, guys. There's a cactus in between here. I'm so sorry. Please erase that next cactus. Sorry about that. When I'm going back and forth, sometimes I do that too fast. We have a smaller cactus first. So that one, we've still got the bump on the bottom part of the landscape, but we have a smaller cactus here in the distance. So it is going to look like this as far as the middle part of it. And then we have an appendage coming out here. So because this is in the distance a little bit, it's a little bit smaller. And then on the other side, we have a little bit of a double happening here too. So we've got 1 bump and 2 bumps. Like so. So it's going to look a bit like that. And then we finally have our leaning cactus. Starting off at the bottom here. Going upward, and then remember kind of curving back to the other side here like this. And then we have one of the arms coming out on the left. Like so. And then one more down here. And then, let's see. And then we finally have a smaller one that's happening right here in the corner. And that one is off in the distance. And we have our cacti. So now we want to just straighten out any of our lines at the bottom here. And then the next step is just going to be drawing our moon, and we can get started with our paint. So we're going to come back over here to the left side, and our moon is not at the top left corner, but a bit down from that. And so we just want to draw a circle. So our circle, or our moon, is a little taller up top. So the way, trying to get a perfect circle is difficult, but try your best. One thing you can try is you can actually split your circle in half with a line like this. And then you can have that line as reference, and you try to make each side, meaning each half circle, very similar to each other, as if it's a mirror image. So I'm looking at this. I also want to see the distance, and I'm just judging it eye-wise. So I'm looking at this, and this side has to come out a little more, a little bit more round. And this side might be good. That's kind of how you get, or a sort of a good way to try and get a perfect circle. And then you can erase your line in the middle. And finish that off. So try that, see if that helps you out. And then our next step is going to be our paint, and we're going to be painting our background first. This is where we're going to be blending. So we're going to be starting off with our flat brush. And what you probably want to do is go around the moon and also the cacti. You may want to go around those with your smaller brush or your fine tip brush, the round one. But what you can first do is, because we're going to be going from left to right with our paintbrush, we're going to be going like this. You're going to be painting a little bit into parts of your cactus. So you may or may not need the smaller brush for that. But you might want to use the pointier brush. And I say smaller, I should say pointier, around your moon. But there again, you can also, go into your moon with your background color just a little bit, just as long as you mostly have the moon still intact. So let's get started. We're going to get started at the top. And so basically, it is a gradient. We're going to start off with our blue, and then we're going to get into our purple and red, orange, yellow. But there's going to be shades in between. So basically, when we start off with our blue and we get into our purple, we add our purple down, but then there's an in-between color there of a purpley blue. So if you can see that right there. And then we do the same thing when we go from purple to red. We've got purple and red mixed together here. And then we start to do the same thing. I didn't exactly do the best job over here. This is actually my second painting. This was another class. For some reason, I couldn't find my original. So I grabbed this one, and I realized I didn't really do the blending here as good as I did in the original. But I'm going to fix that with this painting. So let's get started with our blue up top. And so we're going to be painting our blue from left to right. If you have to, go up and down with your paint, that's okay. But then you're going to sweep. You're going to do sweeping across from left to right. So starting off with our blue, starting up top and doing it in a straight line, straight as possible. And you're going to paint that blue strip probably, I'm going to say 2.5 inches, 2 inches, maybe. somewhere around there. So that's going to be your first color, your blue. So your blue is going to, or should be, depending where your moon is, it's going to go into the top part of your moon, behind it, obviously. So this is where, like I said, you want to be slightly careful as far as going around the moon. As careful as you can. But we'll be painting the moon on top of everything anyway, so. All right, so your first color is your blue. You want to take a look and see if your line is pretty straight. We do have a bit of purple in the two corners of the top of our canvas. So once you create that strip of blue, you then want to dip your brush without washing it off, just kind of the tip of it, like right there in your purple. And you're going to go into your corners and you're going to paint some purple there. And then you're going to go right across and blend it in from corner to corner. So it's just going to be this sort of purpley, slight purpley blue on top of your blue. And then we're going to get even darker as we go down and add our purple to the next part. So here is just a little bit of purpley blue mixed in here with the blue, and it's probably hard to see on Zoom. I'm going to just show that. I'm going to make it go to the side here because you may be able to see the color change. Here is the blue, and then about right here, we've got that color change of a little bit of purple with the blue. So you're still going to keep that blue on your brush, and now you're going to add your next color, which is purple. So like I mentioned, you're going to go right next to your blue that you just painted. And again, probably about, this one is a little bit smaller as far as, you know, how, like what strip, color strip you want to do. So maybe this is, I don't know, 1.5 inches maybe. It's definitely smaller than what we just did. And at this point, you can go around the moon with your purple. And then you're going to bring that brush straight across. Again, going towards your cactus, being quite careful with it. And now you're going to be sweeping from left to right. Kind of mixing that color in. Now, if it's not mixing for you in the way that you want it to be, you can instead mix it on your plate. I forgot to mention that, or your palette. Also to have some sort of either paper plate or one of those plastic palettes in order to mix your paints on. So I'm going right on the plate now, and I'm gonna pre-mix my purpley blue because I don't really like how it's coming out on my canvas. I mixed it right on my canvas, but I don't love the color. So I went right to the plate and I'm mixing that right there. And you're going to extend that just a little bit further down by like half an inch. That's going to be our next part of adding the red. But now, so you're looking at this and saying, oh, well, now there's a line between the blue and the purple. So then what you want to do is go back up with that purple on your brush, and it should be drying just a little bit on your brush. And you can start to smooth in between those two colors, the blue and the purple. Now, this is where you may need to add some blue again. So picking up a little bit of blue on my brush and then going over the line where it meets the purple, meaning the blue and the purple, and then sweeping back and forth. Now, if it's too wet and it's not laying right on your canvas, you want to leave it alone and let it dry a little bit. You can even do what I call the bounce, right? You take your canvas and you kind of bounce it up and down to dry it. Other thing you can do is if you have a hair dryer, you can speed that drying time a little bit by taking out your hair dryer. Mine's drying a little bit more now. I always say it really depends on where you're at. Like if you're in a room that's more humid, it's going to dry slower. If you have air conditioning on and maybe it's, it's pretty cold in there, it's going to dry faster. Like paintings in the wintertime when we're painting always dry faster. So mine seems a little bit slow on the drying too. So I'm letting it dry a little more, and then I'm just going over it again with my brush that is also, the paint is drying on it a little bit. And I'm just trying to get a nice blend. So again, what I'm doing is sweeping back and forth with my brush, especially in the area in between where two colors meet. So here I may want to add just a little more blue again. Just to give it a little more blendability. I'm not sure if I made that word up, but you get the idea. And take a step back as far as, just looking at your painting to see if you like how the gradient is coming out. If you don't, you may have to add more purple, you may have to add more blue, or you may just have to sweep your brush from left to right and blend a little more, but you may have to just wait for the portion of it to dry if it's not blending exactly the way you want. Blending, especially with acrylics, takes some practice. So I think this is pretty good practice to start. I know we've done a few other paintings like this, but it's been a while for those that have been with me for a little while. I'm also going to be adding more paintings in the fall, more painting choices for those that like to paint. Okay, so we're continuing now with the purple, and we're going to introduce our next color, which is going to be red. But I want to add some more purple here to the bottom of the purpley blue to get some more of the purple color, because mine is still kind of looking a bit blue. And I want to really have the purple in here too. Go very carefully in between your cacti here. I know it's hard to kind of get some blending there in the smaller spots, but just take your time and blend, blend, blend. And our next color is going to be red after this, but I know I still need to blend mine, my purple part. This painting is mostly about blending. Okay, I need a little more purple over here. All right. Yeah, I forgot to mention, do remember that your painting does continue after the cacti here. It's sometimes easy to, most of the painting so far has been open sky until you get to these cacti on the right. But the next color you want to add is your red. And again, you can keep your purple. You always keep the color that we just laid down here on the canvas. You can still keep that on your brush because it's going to help with blending those two colors. For that color, that's the in-between, that's like the purpley red. So I'm just going very carefully around the cactus here on the right. So again, you can go up and down as far as when you're painting in that, the color selection there. But then your finishing strokes should be left to right. But it is definitely easier to paint up and down when you're trying to get around each of the cactus. And once you have that red painted in, you can then start to blend back towards your purple. So you're then going to take your red, put a strip of it in your purple, and blend. And I'll redo my color here and really dry my brush. I feel like my paints are really wet and kind of staying on top of the canvas. So I think they have to dry a little bit. But I'm going to go back and add some more red to the red section here. Get that a little more vibrant. Keeping in mind, painting this in a horizontal line. Making sure that line is pretty straight, as straight as you can make it. And I'm letting this dry a little bit and then going to blend. I'm thinking I definitely have to lower my air conditioning because I think it must be humid in here because my paints are drying slowly. Yeah, unless it's my paints somehow. But yeah, again, doing the bounce here. Yep, it's drying a bit. I'm going to try again to do a little more blending. Yeah, that's a little better. Seemed very watery when I was kind of laying it down on the canvas, which is usually a sign of, um, it's too wet. So now I'm going to go back, add more purple above it. In order to get the purple in there and blend it so that it's that purpley red. And then I'll go back above to add the purple to make it more purple-like. So blend, blend, blend. And the other thing is sometimes you need a lighter touch when blending. So if the paint is kind of just going across and it's not laying right, like you can, you'll continue to see um, streaks. What you want to do is just very lightly, like your brush is sort of kind of hovering slightly above the canvas, like it's barely touching, and you're just smoothing out that line. Doing that now and making sure you're kind of going as straight across as you can and going in a back and forth motion. So I'm going to go back and paint a little more of my blue. It looks like it's still a little streaky. So this is where the blending part um, is important in the sense, it may need some touching up as we go. And sometimes you have to go back and add another layer of paint on there, which is what I'm doing right now, just with my blue and purple. And again, it all just depends on how your paint is laying. Now that I'm adding another layer, it's laying a little bit better on the canvas. Needed to dry a little bit and be a little bit thicker. So now I can get the blending I was looking for. And then I go fast from left to right. Again, going very lightly at times, kind of sweeping the canvas very lightly back and forth. Okay, now I'm going to go back into my purple. Where the purple and blue meet. And blend that now that that's a little bit more dry. Yep. And again, blend, blend, blend. Sweeping back and forth. Trying not to have all of your cactus disappear as you're taking your brush and swiping the color. It's a challenge for sure. I know I've easily painted over things. I'd like to add a little more purple again right at the top of the sky once everything is dry. That's just my preference. I like to kind of have a little bit of purple hanging out there. Again, I'll go back and blend it with the blue. Just a little bit of that gradient, even though it's mostly blue. So again, I added a little bit more purple right to the tippy top of my canvas. And then once I laid that in and went back and forth with my brush very lightly, I then started to put the blue on top. I'm getting a nice blend and a nice gradient all the way across. I'm finally just going to work down again into the purple just to make that blending a little more seamless. So I just added just a little bit of blue on my brush. Oh, that might be a little too much. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to re-add a little more purple as I go down, and then we're finally going to start to introduce the other colors. Now, you may have to kind of do this dance of going back and forth with the blending, adding another layer on in order to get it to blend a little more seamlessly, and that's okay. The other thing is you may need to dry your brush a little bit. Oops, let me move that over here. I just realized I started painting, running into my other painting with the colors I was using. Let me see if I can fix that. Bit there. So again, drying those paints. There's a lot of blending and drying with the background in order to get the background to look like a gradient on these warmer evenings. The other thing you can do is you can start to load in the other colors as those are drying. Like I'm not liking my red and my purple right now. They need to be layered more. I'm going to just show it up close. Not liking how they're laying on there. They seem watery, and I haven't used water. So I don't know if I didn't mix the bottles all the way and just kind of threw them on my plate. That may have happened. But they're too light right now, so I'm going to let them dry. And then the next layer will adhere to the layer underneath. So I'm going to go into the orange now. And again, you can still go back and do these gradients. So This is going to be orange and then yellow and then just a little bit of white all the way at the bottom. Just go very carefully in between your cactus right here. Just going very carefully. Trying to look at the line of orange and make sure that it's as straight as you can make it. And then gonna dip that yellow and start the yellow off too. But again, going to go back with the blending afterward. But for now, just laying it down. And then I'm gonna kind of bounce the canvas so that it dries a little bit. I'm gonna lay my brush there on the right side, and I'm gonna bounce my canvas to dry it. Yep, still pretty wet. The other thing you can do, again, is if you're not liking the blending above, like on mine, I want to fix the blue and purple the color that's in between the blue and purple. So I am actually going to rinse off my brush, make sure I dry it really well by patting it on a cushion of paper towels I have here. What I like to do with paper towels, I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning, is I have the paper towels where you can, they're called make a size, where the area is, there's like a perforation and you can either rip it off and have it smaller or you can bend it. So what I like to do is sometimes I rip them off to this size, but I layer them. So I've got quite a bit here. They're mostly used, but I use them to dry my brushes in between. And it's good padding for that. So, all right, so I'm gonna go back and add my purple again here. Yep, and my canvas is a lot drier. So I'm going to be able to blend a little more seamlessly now that it's a bit drier. And this is sort of the pattern we do for these colors. While I have that purple on my brush, I'm going to add the red so that we have that purpley red that transitions us nicely into our red. And just take your time. I'm going to add my red now in the red area. Now that the red is a little more dry, And then now that um, we have orange on here, can start to add red and orange together in order to make the color that blends in between the red and orange. So that would be reddish orange. And wash my brush so that that blend, pat it dry, and bounce the canvas just a little bit to just speed the drying a bit here. All right. Dry off my brush again, make sure not too wet, and start to blend by going back and forth very gently. So I can blend those two colors together, the orange and the red. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of orange on my brush to help along with that blending. I tend to work where, adding a little bit at first, a little bit of color, and then if it's not working, you can add a little more. It's a lot easier to kind of add more than take away. And then blend. I think I still need to add a little more red in this section. To blend it. Yep. And I know at this stage it's so hard not to keep painting over your canvas, your cactus. As long as you can still see the outlines, for the most part, I think you're good. Just going to go back above and just blend a little more of this red and purple in the section in between. There we go. You also might want to change your water at this point. I know we've been doing a lot of blending. Sometimes it's just nice to have some fresh water without the murky colors in it. So you might want to refresh your water. I will be right back just to do that. Right out in the hallway. Okay, fresh water is always a good thing, even when it comes to painting, as long as you don't drink it. Okay, fresh water. And a little more purple here. And then getting ready to continue down and paint the gradient areas between orange and between red and orange, and then orange and yellow. And then our last part right at the tip is just adding a bit of like white and yellow just to give it that brightness right before our landscape starts. So I'm just going to show the original here. So this is actually like a really light lemony yellow right here. And I have added just a little bit of white right at the edge. So that's kind of what I'm talking about as we get down to the bottom here. So, but getting back over here to the red and the orange, I'm just mixing in the gradient area and dabbing on a little more red to make it a little more vibrant. And again, you can always mix it on your plate or whatever you're using for your paint colors. So I'm mixing my red and orange on my plate off here to the side. And then I'm going to add that color. Till I add in the final orange as I'm working downward. So you want to continue working downward toward the bottom of your landscape. And we're very lightly dusting your section with the paint as you're blending. When you're trying to blend the gradients here. And now adding the orange. So moving on down to orange and yellow. Mixing in a bit of orange and yellow. For the gradient area. And remembering to, again, kind of back up and go into the orange so that you can blend those two together. Sweeping left to right very lightly. And then finally heading down into your yellow area. Oops. And grabbing that yellow. Oops, somehow I must have had some blue in my yellow. Oh, I went a little too close to the blue on my paper plate. I'm gonna fix that. So venturing into the yellow territory here in our desert sky. Again, sweeping between back and forth between left and right. So that you're getting that gradient. And at this point, you can very lightly sweep across the bottom of the cactuses here, the cacti. I keep wanting to say cactuses. And then finally adding the white with the yellow. Excuse my arm that's in the camera there. Just taking your time here, lighten it up. Like I said, I like to go back and just add one more kind of light feathery strokes, kind of hovering above the painting. I'm just gonna add a little more red to this section. And just slightly more purple. And then just evening out all of those layers as we're getting down towards here, just adding one more streak of orange here. And then one more of the yellow and the white, and we should be good on the background. Okay. Now the white. It's gonna be like a kind of a lemony white, lemony yellow white. So just doing those finishing touches on the lightest area as we're getting towards the bottom. Adding a little bit of actual white right at the bottom. This is just right at the bottom um, of your sky before we get into the black. And we're going to add some purple on the black to make it look really nice as well. But first, just finishing up this sky. Okay. So before we finish up with the black at the bottom, I'd like to visit our moon, which is going to be white at first, and then we're going to lay in some purple and white to make it more like a lavender. So when you are ready, you can start to lay in your moon with a layer of white paint first. So you want to work carefully and slowly, and you may want to switch brushes at this point. Going carefully around, creating your circle for the moon. The other thing you can do, if it helps, you can turn your painting as you're working. Sometimes it helps to turn it and it allows you to see where you need to fix the circle for the moon. So you can see I'm kind of turning my painting as I'm working on the circle, because looking at it from a different perspective can help. I realize right here, this needs to be a little more round on this side of the circle. Let me rotate it again. And add some more white. And I think it needs to be a little more round on this side. Stick out just a little more. Okay. And then once you get your white laid in to your moon, while it's still wet, you're going to start to add a little bit of purple so that you mix it to get a lavender color. So I'll say that again. Whenever you're ready, after you lay in your white paint for your moon, you want to mix a little bit of purple with a little bit of white so that you can start to get the shading on your moon, which is more of a lavender, and then it gets a little bit more purple, just very slightly towards the outside of the shading. So you want to go in a C shape on the right side of your moon. So right now I'm just doing it with my flat brush, but I am going to go back and use my other brush. It's whatever you feel more comfortable with. And, if you feel, if you're able to make more of these fine lines with your round brush, absolutely switch. I kind of like to make the initial ones with my flat brush because it has a nice edge. And there's a little bit of very light lavender. Let me go closer to it, Marcia. Thank you for telling me. Yeah, it's so very slight on Zoom. Let me change the lighting. Let me see. So me show you the other one. I feel like that's showing up more. So if you look, right, the lavender is in a C shape, two sort of C shapes, right? We've got a smaller C shape on the inside, and then a bit of a roundish C shape coming off of that. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's more the bigger C shape here, and then a little bit coming off. And then we have an edge of a little more lavender towards the outside of the moon. Boy, my stars on this one were really spotty. I was rushing towards the end of this class, and I was not being very careful with my stars, so it looks more like snow. It's a snowy night in the desert. I'm going to leave this up here so that you can still see the moon as you're painting it. And I'm going to add a little more lavender to mine. Oops, I think I just moved my camera here. Sorry about that. A little bit more. It's quite a bit, but I'm going to add that in. I'm going to blend that in with my brush being a little bit drier. So the other thing you can do, if your brush is a little too wet with color, you can wipe it a bit on your paper towel. That's what I did here. Here we go. I'm gonna add just a little bit of sort of that purple along the edge there. And then our last two steps are going to be our silhouette and our stars. So the silhouette is of the cacti, obviously black. So when you are ready, you can wash off your brush. And again, I like to start off using my flat brush. I go straight across the bottom with the black. And then we've got some lavender highlights. Let me just move my camera up a little bit here. So again, I'm going straight across the bottom with the black paint and work my way up. And fill in that space. With the black. And here again, when you get to the parts with the cactus or even along this edge here, of your landscape. If you're more comfortable with using your round brush, you can switch to that. But I pretty much like to use my flat brush. Every once in a while, I'll go back and just, round out a little section of the cactus, literally with the round brush. All right, now I'm going in for all the cacti shapes. And just take your time, slow and steady hand as much as possible. So I feel like there are certain sections where I've definitely gone back using the detail brush, especially to round out the circular shapes. And the edges, like the top of the cacti. Also, remember to pay attention to the bottom of your landscape. Starts to kind of go pretty fast once you start all the cactus. Sometimes you have to go back and fix up your background color. But that's okay. And then obviously our last step on this is going to be our stars, which we use our detail brush for. And we go very lightly. Just, oops, just turned my light completely off. And the last cactus right here. But one more step before finishing up with our stars is like to get that lavender that we used for our moon. You have any left? If not, you can make some more here. And the reason being is we want to add some lavender to the sort of lighter parts to highlight the cactus, each one. So I'm just kind of mixing up my lavender. So I'm just going to show you on here. This is all lavender. It's not white. Lavender. So I'm going to go back in and start to add all on the left side because the moon would be kind of shining on that side. Now, if it's too wet right now, you might want to wait. Like too wet from the black. Some of mine have dried on the left here. And I like to take the side of my flat brush and create those because you can kind of do it in a bit of a line with the side of the brush. But again, if you feel more comfortable with the detail brush, like if it's going, your line is getting too thick and you want it thinner, you might want to switch to your detail brush. So again, we're just kind of giving a little bit of light from the moon on the left side of each of our cacti. And then also along our landscape. And I added it in, inside the landscape too. Probably doesn't make much sense, but it's our painting, right? So we can add some light if we want to. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. So I like to do the cactus first and then below. Again, if yours is a little too wet, you might want to go into your landscape instead. I think mine might still be a little bit wet there. Just a little bit. Still letting me make some of the lines here. And you want your brush to be a little bit dry. Okay, sounds good, Chrissy. Yeah, we are almost finished. Our last part. I'm going to let this dry a little more and then go back to it. So now grabbing the detail brush to create the stars, you basically want to just put a little bit on your on the tip of your brush. And for this, you might want to turn your painting around since the part is still wet that we just did. And you're going to start to dot very lightly, hovering above your canvas, and then just slightly dropping the point of the brush on the canvas very lightly, and you're going to get nice tiny stars. If you kind of rush it like I did in my previous painting, you're going to get snow. So again, going very tiny and just kind of slow with those dots for the stars. You can also make some kind of in a cluster and some very light, when the paint is kind of running out on your brush. That's kind of nice because it makes the stars appear as if they're far away. And remember to carry those stars into the rest of your sky, meaning the purple, red, orange, yellow. I'm going to redip here. I don't know if you can see my tiny stars. Yep. I just looked. Again, just going really carefully. In about a minute, I would love to see what everyone's looks like. I'm going to stop the recording in about a minute as we're just finishing up our program here. Yeah, my black is still a bit wet, so I'm going to wait for that to. Oh, wow. Michael, that looks amazing. Let me stop the recording here.